Let the River Run Silver Again. Introduction, starting on page 6. The Mighty Journey of an Important Fish. American shad, the largest member of the herring family, is a type of anadromous fish. Fish that spend part of their lives in the ocean and part of their lives in bays and rivers. While in the ocean, American shad eat plankton and, in turn, are eaten by larger animals such as bottlenose dolphins. Each spring, however, millions of silvery adult American shad travel hundreds of thousands of miles from the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to return to the fresh waters of the United States and Canada where they were born. Here they will find suitable sites, spawn, and then return to the sea. From the eggs they lay and fertilize will come the next generation of young shad. The return of the shad each year to the waters of their birth is a critical part of the life cycle of the species and of the ecology of many of our bays and rivers. These annual runs of American shad were an important source of food for many species of fish and birds, and historically for people. When the European settlement of North America began more than 500 years ago, in the 1500s, the American shad was found only in the streams and coastal waters of the East Coast. Because shad were so valuable, however, they were introduced in the 1870s into the waters of the West Coast, initially in the Sacramento River of California. Now they occur in a much larger area along the west coast of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. When returning to their home waters to spawn, shad will swim mightily until they reach their birthplace, or until they are prevented from doing so by some obstacle, such as a dam. Unlike salmon, shad do not jump, so they cannot get past even very low dams to reach what were formerly spawning grounds. Back to page 6. Caption for the map. The American shad and its range in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and adjacent coastal areas of North America. Once found only in the North Atlantic Ocean, the species was introduced into some West Coast rivers and now occurs in the North Pacific Ocean as well. Back to page 7. Rivers, dams, and fish. A historical relationship. Waterfalls and natural dams such as stone ledges, beaver dams, or fallen logs are normal features of many rivers and small streams, and they provide necessary habitat for many aquatic animals such as fish, amphibians, and insects. Early human inhabitants of North America added their own, sometimes dam-like structures called weirs to the streams, lake shores, and coastlines in order to trap fish to eat. Europeans, settlers, caption for the diagram on the top of page 7. Life cycle of American shad. Spring. Adults migrate to fresh waters. Summer. Juveniles use rivers and estuarine waters as nursery areas. Fall. Juveniles move out to the ocean and join adults. Winter. Juveniles stay in nearshore ocean waters until mature at 3 to 6 years. Diagram. Mature adults 3 plus years of age. Next, fish down. Immature adults 1 to 3 years of age. Third one down. Juveniles 0 to 1 years of age. Fourth down, eggs. Caption. American shad are born in freshwater environments, but they quickly move into an oceanic environment where, for the first few years of their lives, they primarily inhabit near shore areas. As adults, they move into the open ocean, but in the spring, these adults return to the area of their birth to spawn. Caption for the drawing on the bottom of page 7. This view of Native Americans fishing off the coast of North Carolina or Virginia during the late part of the 16th century shows at least 3 fish weirs in use. Numerous fish weirs, often but not always V-shaped, were used in rivers and smaller streams throughout much of North America. Back to the text. Page 8. European settlers came and began building numerous larger permanent dams to provide water power to mills for grinding grain, making cloth, or other uses, and to aid navigation through canals. Later, dams were built to create water reservoirs to supply electricity to cities or to control runoff and flooding. In rivers across our continent, dams such as the one at Little Falls, Maryland, blocked the great migration of anadromous fish and prevented them from reaching their traditional spawning grounds. With less suitable habitat available in which to lay their eggs, combined with the effects of pollution over harvesting, fish populations such as the Potomac Shad declined significantly. The Potomac River is a large river with a watershed that drains parts of Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C., before it flows into the Chesapeake Bay and then the Atlantic Ocean. The first dam across the Potomac was Little Falls Dam, located 10 miles downstream from Great Falls. Little Falls Dam was built in the early 1800s to supply water to the new Chesapeake and Ohio, the C&O Canal, that connected Washington, D.C. to points west. A second, larger dam was added later at the same location to help provide drinking water to Washington, D.C. Just over 10 miles upstream from Little Falls is Great Falls, the natural barrier to the upstream migration of American shad in the Potomac River. Little Falls Dam, however, prevented migrating shad from reaching those 10 miles of what had been their traditional spawning grounds. While the shad were unable to reach their spawning grounds, they were also being heavily harvested. In just over 200 years, the American shad fishery went from being the largest and most valuable fishery on the Potomac River to being closed in 1982 because so few shad remained. In the 1980s, efforts to restore the shad fishery emerged. A government task force proposed a plan to allow the fish to bypass Little Falls Dam. If a fishway were built in the dam, then the shad could swim through the structure to reach their traditional upstream spawning and nursery areas. The idea of the Little Falls Dam fishway got a boost in 1993 when the federal and state agencies that made up the Chesapeake Bay program announced a plan to reopen more than 1,347 miles of streams to fish migration and spawning by modifying or removing dams throughout the bay's watershed. In 1995, as part of this large program, biologists led by Jim Cummins from the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin began releasing hatchery-raised American shad above Little Falls Dam. Eggs had been collected from shad caught in the Potomac River, then hatched in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Harrison Lake National Fish Hatchery. After the young fish were released, they would make their way to the Atlantic Ocean. Later, as adults, they would instinctively try to return to the area where they had been released in order to spawn. Hopefully, the Little Falls Dam fishway would be in place when they returned. Jim invited Sandy Geddes, a Westbrook Elementary School teacher, and her 5th grade Aqua Equals Stream team to participate in the program. The students would learn how to collect eggs from captured adult shad and how to raise and release their own young fish. The students also would help create awareness with their community of the need for the fishway at Little Falls Dam. What happened over the next 8 years is a unique environmental success that both revitalized the Potomac River and its threatened fish and benefited the lives of participating students and their communities. Here is their story. The box at the top of page 10, the National Fish Passages Program. With the Potomac and Susquehanna rivers of the Chesapeake Bay watershed as models, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service created the National Fish Passages Program in 1999. This program works with communities, organizations, and agencies to restore water flow in streams nationwide that will allow fish to once again migrate into waters that were not accessible to them because of dams and other blockages.